All right, let's jump right into this. If you've ever spent a summer in Japan or, even just visited a Japanese grocery store, you absolutely know this image. A sweating, condensation-covered glass pitcher filled with this deep, rich brown liquid just sitting right there in the refrigerator. We are talking, of course, about Mugicha, or Japanese barley tea. It is the undisputed heavyweight champion of Japanese summer hydration. Crisp, roasty, naturally caffeine-free, and just deeply refreshing. But while we mostly think of it today as this modern, everyday refrigerator staple, this beverage actually holds an absolutely epic history. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack the incredible journey of Mugicha, and we'll trace it all the way from the literal cradle of human civilization straight to your local convenience store.
So I want to kick things off by posing a little question to you. How exactly did an ancient, tough, originally chewed grain become Japan's ultimate summer drink? It's such a fascinating evolution. We often take the things we eat and drink every single day totally for granted, right? We just assume they've always been neatly packaged for our convenience. But to really understand Mugicha, we have to pivot completely away from modern refrigeration, and we need to travel way back to the very dawn of agriculture.
Section 1. Ancient origins of barley, from Mesopotamia to the Jomon period.
The relationship between humans and barley is just incredibly ancient. I mean, the sheer scale of this timeline is mind-blowing. We're talking about 13,000 years ago. Barley was already being cultivated way back then in the cradles of civilization. So, across modern-day Iran, Iraq, the Tigris-Euphrates River system, and the Indus Valley. Fast forward quite a bit, and this super hardy grain finally makes its way over to Japan roughly 2,500 years ago, during the late Jomon period, where it spread widely as a cultivated crop. And by the 2nd and 3rd centuries BC, we actually start seeing the very earliest origins of barley being consumed as a beverage in Japan. But, as we'll see in a minute, they definitely weren't brewing iced tea just yet.
Section 2. From food to drink, the invention of Mugi Kogashi.
Human ingenuity is pretty brilliant, isn't it? You see, raw barley grains are essentially inedible. You can't just chew on them without breaking a tooth. So early agricultural societies had to get a bit creative. First, they figured out that, hey, if you roast the grains and then soak them in water, they soften up just enough to actually eat. But here is where the culinary aha moment happens. People naturally started to notice that the water they were soaking these roasted grains in actually tasted pretty amazing. It had this rich, roasted, deeply savory flavor. Over time, as primitive agriculture advanced, this purely practical food prep step evolved. Instead of just soaking the barley to eat the grain, people began purposefully boiling roasted barley just to extract that delicious flavor. Basically, they accidentally invented a tea.
Which brings us to a really crucial historical breakthrough. It's called Mugi Kogashi. This is roasted barley flour that was traditionally dissolved in hot water. Historically speaking, this is the 10th century prototype of the Mugicha we all know and love today. In fact, Japan's very first encyclopedia, the Wamyo Rujusho, which was compiled way back in the early 10th century during the Heian period, actually records this exact practice of drying barley, roasting it into a fine powder, and dissolving it in hot water. But at this point in time, this definitely wasn't an everyday drink for the masses. It was a total luxury enjoyed pretty much exclusively by the Heian nobility.
But things shifted dramatically a few centuries later. So, during the 1587 Kitano Grand Tea Ceremony in Kyoto, the legendary samurai warlord Toyotomi Hideyoshi issued this famous 7-article decree. He explicitly stated that absolutely anyone, regardless of class, we're talking from retainers to merchants to common farmers, was welcome to attend. And he specifically noted, quote, "Even if you have no tea, Kogashi is fine." So the huge takeaway here is that by the Sengoku period, Mugi Hogashi had officially trickled down to the commoners. It became this perfectly acceptable, highly accessible substitute for actual tea leaf, which, were still incredibly expensive at the time.
Section 3. Edo's hot summer tradition. The plot twist. Mugicha was hot.
Okay, brace yourselves for a real plot twist. Before modern refrigeration was a thing, citizens of the Edo period drank something called mugiyu, which literally translates to barley hot water. That's right, Mugicha was originally a hot summer treat. Cold drinks just simply weren't common back then, and actual Japanese green tea, sencha, was still a luxury way out of reach for everyday folks. But barley was harvested right in the early summer, in May and June. So drinking a hot, incredibly fresh, intensely aromatic cup of mugiyu was literally the absolute peak of summer seasonality for the working class of Edo.
To give you a sense of this, there's this fantastic quote from a historical text called the Kanten Kenbunki, written between 1789 and 1844, and it paints such a vivid picture of how popular this became. It says, "Since summer evenings, every town puts out lanterns for Mugicha and sets up tea stalls." I mean, can you just picture it? The sun goes down, that thick, humid Edo heat slightly breaks, and suddenly the streets just light up with all these lanterns. You've got these bustling night stalls run by young women serving up steaming hot, freshly roasted Mugicha to the massive crowds. It wasn't just a drink anymore. It was an entire vibrant evening culture, one that was actually captured all the time in the beautiful ukiyo-e woodblock prints of the era.
Section 4. The Rise of Cold Mugicha, the shift to the modern home. Now, this marks a massive cultural shift. During the Edo period, Mugicha was hot, it was communal, it was sold at evening street stalls, and it was a highly seasonal harvest treat. But as we transition into the Showa period, we witness the birth of modern Mugicha, served ice cold, brewed privately at home, and kept as a year-round refrigerated staple. Now, this transition started happening gradually in the Meiji era, mostly as Western-style cafes began to replace those traditional street stalls. But there was another very, very practical reason that the brewing process moved indoors.
The real driver behind the shift? Good old-fashioned sanitation. During the Meiji era, modern water infrastructure was still very much in development, and in a lot of areas, tap water simply wasn't safe to drink straight out of the pipe. You had to boil it first. Well, folks figured, if you absolutely have to boil all your drinking water anyway, why not throw in some roasted barley you bought from the local shop to make it taste great? So, brewing Mugicha at home basically evolved as this delicious, super practical piece of life wisdom just to ensure the family's water supply was sanitary. Now, as refrigerators finally became a common thing in households during the late Showa period, the whole process of making cold Mugicha turned into this deeply nostalgic summer ritual. First, families would boil whole grain barley, which is known as marusubu, in this massive kettle. Now, this wasn't a quick process. Boiling whole grains takes time, but it extracts this incredibly deep, robust flavor and a rich, roasted aroma that would literally fill the entire house. Second, because obviously you couldn't just shove a boiling hot kettle straight into the fridge, you'd set it in a large tub filled with water and ice to cool it down. Finally, once it was chilled, you'd transfer it to a pitcher and store it in the refrigerator. That multi-step ritual, that became the defining backdrop of a modern Japanese summer.
Section 5. Modern convenience and health. Tea bags, PET bottles, and tokuho.
But let's be real, boiling whole grains takes a lot of time, and time is something modern households often just don't have. So innovation took over. We saw the introduction of crushed grain tea bags that were designed specifically for cold water extraction. Literally, you just drop a bag into a pitcher of water and wait. Super easy. Then we got instant powders, and of course, those incredibly convenient PET bottles that you could now find in literally every single vending machine in Japan. But the beautiful thing is, despite all these modern formats, Mugicha completely retained its core identity as a healthy hydrator. It remains naturally caffeine-free, and it's rich in minerals, which makes it absolutely perfect for everyone from toddlers all the way up to the elderly.
Which actually brings us to a seriously fascinating trend that's popped up in recent years. You might have noticed this. Why are modern tokuho? Now, these are officially certified health-enhanced drinks in Japan, designed to do things like lower blood pressure or block fat absorption. Why are so many of them barley tea flavored? I mean, the functional, health-boosting ingredients they add to these drinks don't actually come from the barley itself at all. So why choose that very specific flavor profile? Well, the answer is actually incredibly simple. It's because the flavor is just deeply, deeply familiar. It's comforting, and it's incredibly easy for Japanese people to drink every single day without getting tired of it. You know, green tea can sometimes be a bit astringent, and plain water can get boring. But Mugicha, it has zero bitterness. It pairs perfectly with literally any meal. By taking a health drink and flavoring it like Mugicha, beverage companies are basically tapping into a cultural flavor profile that people are already biologically and historically wired to consume effortlessly, day in and day out.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. We have traveled all the way from the ancient, dusty, agricultural fields of Mesopotamia, right through the noble courts of the Hellenistic period, out into the lantern-lit, bustling night streets of Edo, and finally, right into the convenience of your modern refrigerator. It is truly amazing how a simple, basic necessity, just trying to figure out a way to eat a really hard grain, evolved into an absolute cultural cornerstone. So the next time you pour yourself a crisp, ice-cold glass of Mugicha, take just a second before you drink it.
Will you taste the 13,000 years of human history, ingenuity, and tradition in every single drop? I really hope this explainer gave you a brand new appreciation for your favorite summer drink. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.